Okay, so here is our lecture on planning and strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a quote, a relevant quote by Sir Winston Churchill, who used to be the Prime Minister of the UK, that he who fails to plan, or she who fails to plan, is basically planning to fail. So planning is extremely important for us, whether as an individual in our own personal family life, in our own individual careers, as well as in our approach to and in our progress in terms of our managerial skills, management of a department or an organization. Planning is of crucial importance. And Jack Welch, former CEO of General Electric, GE, says that manage your destiny, plan your destiny, or someone else will. So the choice is ours, whether we would like to plan or whether we would like to leave our planning and destiny in somebody else's hand or in fate's hand. Okay, so in this specific session, our focus would be on understanding the basic steps in planning. We would understand that how those 6 steps of planning could be applied not only in our personal life, but also in an organizational context. And then we would also have a discussion of strategic management. So planning may be defined as a conscious system where we are interested in identification of goals, the goals for us, the goals for our department, for our organization. But at the same time, those goals could be not only at the level of the individual, but also at the level of the group or strategic business unit or the organization, and how those goals have to be realized. So planning is not just the identification of goals, but also how those goals have been conceived, and more importantly, how those goals are to be realized. So if we are engaging in a formal planning process, then surely we would like to see a formal or more formalized set of goals and plans how to achieve those goals, which are not only appropriate, maybe smart goals. They are smart enough in terms of being specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time-bound, but also feasible in terms of the available resources. And that's why we are using the word realistic in a given set of circumstances. Okay, so some questions such as what needs to be done, how it can be done or it has to be done, when would it be done, where, and why at all we need to do it, and who would do what. So these are some important, I would say, questions in a planning process, not only in a planning process, but also in a strategic management process. Okay, so how do we compare goals with plans? Basically, goals form the criterion against which our work results are to be evaluated. Goals are the end results. The destination are the aims which we would like to achieve. But the plans are to do with the actions which outline how those goals are to be realized. What kind of resources would be needed? What is the time frame that we would like to pursue? What actions would be necessary in order to make the best use of resources in order to achieve those goals? So therefore, goals are part of a plan. So plan is the larger thing, and goal is one of the specific dimension or the aim or the destination which we would like to achieve. So in the planning process, we have to understand that planning process, as I indicated right at the onset of this session, that planning is the first and the most important part of most important function of management, the 4 functions of management, and the first function is planning, which would be then followed by organizing, leading, and controlling. And these are the 6 important steps or dimensions of a process of planning. That first of all, we would conduct a situational analysis. So for example, what exactly are the opportunities and challenges in the external market? What exactly are our own strengths and fortes and weaknesses and deficiencies? Then we would outline our goals, and then we would also identify the alternative goals and plans. So goal one, plan A, plan B, plan C, and maybe possibly alternative goals and alternative plans. We would like to compare those goals and plans. Once we have identified those goals and alternative plans, we would need to evaluate them in terms of which goal and plan is more fruitful, is more feasible, is more realistic in our own given constraints and circumstances. We would select the most optimum goal and plan, which can help us achieve our individual and organizational objectives. We would implement that plan. And then over the period of time, we would also evaluate the progress of that plan. So that is the planning process. You see that in the last class and also in the last to last class, we also engaged in decision-making process. And you will see that some of these dimensions in the planning process, these may also be compared with the general decision-making stages. So here is a look, take a look. On the left-hand side, you would see the general decision-making stages, which has to do with the identification and diagnosis of the problem. And then we generate various solutions. We evaluate those alternatives. Then we make a final choice in terms of the best possible alternative in order to achieve the resolution of that specific problem. We make a choice, we implement that choice, and then we evaluate our progress in terms of the ability to achieve that resolution or not. So these are the basic steps in decision-making, general decision-making, which are quite comparable to the steps which have been suggested in the context of specific formal planning. For example, situational analysis, followed by identification of alternative goals and plans, and then evaluation of those goals and plans, then selection of the best possible goal and plan, the implementation of that plan, and then monitoring and control and improvement in that plan. So in that way, we can see that these steps are quite comparable. So this is in this slide, I have provided you with more explanation of the steps in the planning process. So for example, in the situational analysis, we would be looking at the current trends, the future trends, the past trends, whatever those trends are, for example, in the context, in terms of the market trends, in terms of consumer behavior trends, in terms of the availability of human resources trends, or economic and regulatory trends. So that is part of situational analysis. Then we would identify a set of goals and alternative goals and plans. So for example, what exactly has to be achieved, what would be the target and aim. SMART goals I have also identified. For example, if we are in Al-Fatah, then each store we may think about that to increase the sales of each store by 5% in the next 5 years, maybe 5% on a yearly basis. Maybe 5% is not realistic. Maybe 5% is too little. Our situational analysis would tell us what's happening in the industry and what exactly is the trajectory in the industry. Plans are to do with how those targets or those objectives are to be achieved. And some plans are single-use plans. So maybe we can use those plans only once, but then there are some which may be standing plans, which may be recurring, and some may be contingency, which depend on the situation. Then we evaluate the goals and the plans which have been identified. We would compare the pros and cons of each of the goal and the corresponding plan. We would also look at the potential outcomes which may be realized if those plans are to be implemented. And then we would prioritize and eliminate those plans which are not really feasible to our larger organizational objectives. Perhaps those may be ignored or those may be modified. So once we have selected the most optimum and realistic and smart goals and plans, then we can invest in terms of, for example, investment in terms of money, investment in terms of technology, investment in terms of recruitment and development of human resources, investment in terms of, for example, development or creation of strategic business units. Then we would look at various scenarios and we may design contingency plans for various scenarios in a business unit or in an industry. Once those goals and plans have been selected, then we would go towards the implementation, the actual implementation. So of course, we would understand the plan. What does it entail? What kind of resources are to be made available, are to be dedicated, the time frame which has to be utilized, the people who would be responsible for what functions. So you see that we would need to have resources. We would need to also not only develop, but also motivate our human resources in order to implement that plan. We would need to collaborate across functions and departments and people and boundaries. And then over the period of time, whether that is 6 months or 1 year or 3 months or 5 years, we would need to monitor the progress of implementation of those plans against the targets and the goals which had been identified. So certain KPIs, our key performance indicators, would need to be identified, and then our progress would need to be matched on an incremental basis. And surely we would also need to have certain control systems, for example, performance management systems for individuals as well as for departments, that if there are any gaps, then what kind of corrective or developmental interventions could be introduced in order to address those gaps. And maybe there is something wrong, something seminally wrong in the goal identification and plans, then perhaps those goals and plans need to be revisited in a collaborative fashion. So why exactly do we need to plan, as Sir Winston Churchill said right at the onset, that if we fail to plan, then basically we plan to fail. So in order to succeed in our individual life, in our organizational life, as a manager or as a leader, we need to plan, because the planning improves focus. It gives us a focus towards specific targets and goals. But it also gives us flexibility, for example, in terms of the availability and allocation and reallocation of resources towards goal number 1 and sub-goal number 1.1 and sub 1.2. So it also gives us some flexibility because we have a point of reference and we could then fine-tune that point of reference in response to, for example, certain situational contingencies or variables. It improves our action orientation, which means that our actions would be oriented towards specific goals. For example, right at the onset in this class, perhaps in the session 2 or 3, we identified the topics and we allocated topics for various seminar activities and presentations, which not only gave you the goals, but also oriented towards your actions towards, for example, development of those seminars. So for example, okay, we have to read that specific chapter. We have to do reading in order to bring more organizational examples relevant to that topic. We have to identify, for example, a suitable organization, and then we have to find access. We have to find a suitable contact with whom interviews could be conducted in order to gather practical evidence and practical data with respect to that specific topic. And then we also need to design some kind of class activity so that our seminar is not only informative, but also engaging and interactive and interesting. Planning's benefits also include that they facilitate coordination in various people, coordination across various departments, various functions, because the goal is common, but various departments, whether those are marketing departments, or operations department, or quality assurance department, or sales department, for example, they have to be coordinated with each other in order to achieve that specific goal. It would improve time management because surely there would be, as you know, that their goals, the SMART goals are always time bound. So is planning is time bound. That look, in order those goals are to be achieved in a span of 6 months or 1 month or 1 year. And these are the sub goals which are to be achieved in the first quarter, in the second quarter, and so on and so forth. So time management and control also. When there is time management, when there is a dedicated allocation of resources, when there is a specific identification of the sub goals, then it also improves our ability to control. And if there are any gaps, surely it also helps us in terms of dedication of our resources to offer intervention. So here is an example of planning steps. Imagine that we were thinking of launching a sports publication, that a sports magazine, maybe a magazine to do with cricket or gym or some other sports activities, yoga, and we are thinking of publishing a magazine. So step number 1, which is to do with situational analysis, is maybe we have to look at the number of teens who may subscribe to such a magazine. We may have to look at the appeal of the teen market of our advertisements. Those advertisements which we are planning to design, for example, in the electronic media and in the social media, then we have to really look at our advertisements from teens' attractiveness perspective and our ability to serve the market effectively. And what exactly are current economic conditions? Would people be interested? Are people really interested in sports? Do they have enough, for example, resources to go to sports and buy a sports magazine? So that is step number 1, analysis of the situation. And step number 2 is identification of alternative goals and plans. So for example, whether the magazine or the sports publication, should it be targeted at young men, maybe goal number 1, or the alternative could be young women. Another alternative could be, for example, maybe both young and older generations of men, or maybe women, or maybe both. And whether the magazine should be online, should it be in a URL shape, or should it be in a PDF shape, or should it be in a print form, or should it offer both versions or all versions? So the pros and cons of those goals and plans. So step number 3, we evaluate. So for example, would a print magazine, what would be the cost of the print magazine? Surely it is likely to be much more than, for example, a digital magazine. Would a newsstand sale of a print sports magazine along with printed newspapers, would it be profitable enough to justify the launch? Should we think of going online, and instead we should think of heavy advertisement on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook? Step number 4 is that we then finally, after evaluating various goals and plans, we select a specific goal and plan. So we would look at the investment which would be required in order to execute that specific goal and plan. We would need to identify the size of the market. Maybe we can hope that maybe 2,000 print copies would be sold, but 4,000 digital subscriptions we are hoping to achieve, for example. Step number 5 would be implementation, where we would need to implement, we would need to identify the KPIs and the targets. That, for example, we would start with heavy advertisement on digital media, and we would also like to tag along our sports magazine with some maybe already popular newspapers. And we are hoping that in the first 1 month, we should be able to have this many digital subscriptions and this many print subscriptions. But then step number 6 is that in the next 1 year, we would evaluate our progress. We would monitor and control. Is for example, the quality of publication exactly the way we wanted it to be? Is the paper offset? Is the printing of the high quality? Is our website stable enough? Are the advertisements which are being placed, for example, on Instagram, are they good enough, attractive enough? What do the survey results tell us? And are the expected sales in terms of subscriptions, are they really on the mark? Are we lagging? Are we ahead of the expectations? And if there is a gap, then how could those gaps be plugged, could be addressed? Maybe we need to train our team. Maybe we need to redesign our advertisements. Maybe we need to change our media. Maybe we need to review our content. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, this was a very simple example of a process of planning if we think of launching a sports magazine. Okay, now let me go to take you forward in our theoretical discussion of levels of planning. Planning can be also decided at multiple levels. One is the strategic level. Here we are thinking about, for example, long-term goals. For example, 3 to 5 years or 10 years. In the context of China as a country, it is usually said that China thinks 50 years ahead, whereas countries such as in Western Europe, they are stereotypically, they are assumed to think in 1 to 5 years terms. And whereas many other countries, they only think in the context of 6 months to 1 year. So strategic management usually is at the top management level, and the long-term goals are 3 years or more, where long-term resources are dedicated to achieve long-term objectives. Tactical level of planning is more to do from 6 months to 1 year or 1 to 2 years. It is at the level of the middle management. And the operational level is more to do at the lower level of management, at the junior most level of management, and that is usually less than 1 year. It can be anything between 1 month to 1 year or 6 months. But bear in mind that at all of these levels, from strategic to tactical and operational, the goals have to be aligned. So operational level managers, they would be working towards achieving of the tactical goals, and tactical goals surely would also be aligned with the long-term strategic goals. So these are various levels, ladies and gentlemen. Here is an example of how those goals are to be aligned and how those plans are to be aligned across various levels. For example, in the whole foods market, the strategic goal could be that we have to sell the highest quality product in the next 1 to 3 years. And the operational goals would be that we would continue to provide the highest quality of ingredients, which are not only fresh, but also great in taste and nutritional value, and also in terms of health and safety and appearance. And tactical goals would be that the store environment should be attractive and conducive enough in order to invite and satisfy our customers. So this is an example of how strategic, tactical, and operational goals could be aligned. Very quickly, I would like to give you an overview of strategy map. It is a tool which can be used by individual leaders and managers in organizations in order to explain their strategic goals. And it also enables those managers at every level to understand the parts which they are planning, which they are going to play in the larger plan. So here is a look, take a look at this strategy map. The focus of any strategy map is to create value by identifying, and more importantly, by aligning goals at various levels and various functions. So here you look at this, that in terms of strategy map, the financial goal is the maximization of shareholder value. That is at the financial level. But at the customer level, the goal is to exceed customers' expectation, but also to inspire loyalty. So these are two goals. And you can see that if these two goals are achieved, which is the identification and exceeding of customer expectation and inspiring and improving customer loyalty, surely it would improve the shareholder value in terms of the financial outcomes of an organization. Similarly, in terms of internal business processes, the goals could be creation of quality partnerships across various departments, maximization of operational efficiencies and effectiveness, and the generation of high quality, manufacturing of high quality products or offering of high quality services, which are internal business processes. And in terms of learning and growth goals, for example, for human resource development, maybe we would need to recruit high quality staff. And then we would need to develop them further in order to improve their human capital. So you see that all of these levels, learning and growth level goals, are to be aligned with internal business processes goals, which are subsequently to be aligned with and result in customer satisfaction and financial goals. This is known as a strategy map. Here is another example of a strategy map, which you can see in your own time. Once again, we are looking at goals at the financial level, at the customer level, at the internal level, and also in terms of human resource development or learning and growth levels. So there is a case, but we, given that today we are focused on a seminar, which is to be presented today. So therefore, I think that I have given you enough in terms of the theoretical background of the planning process, planning and perhaps strategic management. I think I can spend a couple of minutes on strategic management as well. So bear with me, and I will give you at least some idea, some overview of strategic management, and then I'll give an opportunity to our friends who have to present today. So let me take you to strategic management. So I think the most important thing in strategic management is, if ladies and gentlemen, if you focus on Max McConn's 5 basic questions about strategy, remember these questions. These are the most important questions in strategy and strategic management. So the first question is where we are. Okay, so the first thing which we need to answer is, where do we currently stand as an organization? What kind of resources we have? What kind of aspirations we have? So where we are, that is number 1. Number 2, where do we want to go from here? So we are at point A, but we would like to be at point B. So therefore, we have identified that, look, we are at point A, but we would like to be at point B. So where we are and where we want to go. Number 3, what changes have to be made in order to enable us to transition from point A to point B? So what changes have to be made? That is question number 3. Question number 4 are how those changes are to be incorporated, how those changes can be made. That is question number 4. And question number 5 is, how shall we progress? How shall we evaluate our progress? What would be the KPIs? How would we make sure that those changes are being made in an effective manner, and that those changes are also effective in terms of our transition from point A to point B? These are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 basic questions for strategy. So always remember these questions: where we are, where do we want to go, what changes are to be implemented, how would those changes be made, and how shall we measure our progress in terms of those changes and our transition from point A to point B. So in the light of those 5 questions, ladies and gentlemen, these are the 6 core components of a strategic management process. So first of all, the first step is identify the organization's current mission, goals, and strategies. So the first thing would be, in any strategy, identify the mission, vision, values, and goals of an organization. Remember these 4 words. Mission of an organization: why does the organization exist? Vision of the organization: what does the organization want to become or realize in the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years? That is vision. Values: what are the core principles on which the organizational members' conduct have to be evaluated and may be expected? And goals: what are the long-term goals which the organization hopes to achieve? So this is the first step. The second step is the second and third steps are to do with the SWOT analysis. So the opportunities or threats are to be evaluated in the external market, and the strengths and weaknesses are to be evaluated and identified in the internal side of the organization. So OT on the outer side and SW on the inner side. SWOT analysis is to be conducted. Steps number 2 and 3. Step number 4 is that now that mission, vision, goals have been identified, SWOT analysis has been conducted. Now we can formulate strategies in order to achieve that mission, vision, and goals. And once the strategy has been planned, now that strategic plan has to be implemented, which is implementation of strategies. And then we would evaluate results, our progress on the achievement of those goals and on the implementation of those strategies. And then surely there would also be some corrective action, some control action, if there are any gaps in the way we are implementing the strategy, or maybe in the way the goals were identified. So these, ladies and gentlemen, are 6 core components of strategic management process. And these are 5 basic questions for strategy. I thought that it is important that you have also this knowledge in terms of planning and strategic management.